What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. What I'm doing today is, well, we're going to do a little bit of a crash course in some tips. So what I recently experienced was some really destroyed and clapped out swing arm bearings. So what I did was I ordered a set of swing arm bearings online. The swing arm bearings were made by a company called All Balls, and they came with this tool. So one side of this tool is for a four-part or four-portion, whatever you want to call it, castle nut that is underneath this cap. That castle nut is essentially a lock nut for a bolt, a very hefty bolt, which has a 17 millimeter drive on it. So that's where that side of the tool comes in handy. So you'll unlock the castle nut with this, then following that you'll back out the bolt with the 17 millimeter drive. And that is that silver bolt right there that I guess extends through the dust seal and pushes the taper bearing against the race. So without this tool, you'd probably end up having to make a custom tool out of a socket, which I saw a gentleman do on a different video, but whatever. I'm not going to go destroying a socket for this purpose. I'd rather just pay up and just have my life a little easier. So yeah, whatever money I invest in this part, I saved in time, and that time is priceless. So anyway, once I removed the castle nut, the bolt, obviously the taper portion of the bearing came out, and what you're stuck with in there are the races, which are more than likely rusted as hell and basically bonded or welded to the frame. What you end up having to do is take a small Dremel. I think I have one here I can show you. This one's damaged, but I can show you for example purposes. This is a cutting wheel that you put into a Dremel. And then you end up doing some, let's see if I could do this, some kind of angled cuts onto that race, and eventually you'll end up cutting through it. And then what you'll do is you'll take a screwdriver or some type of tool and just kind of tap that out, and the portion that you cut out, and that will relieve, I guess, the tension or pressure that is that's on the remaining portion of that race. And then you could probably use a little crowbar, is what I used, to pry out the remaining portion of that race. Once you do that, make sure you clean up with a wire brush, clean up the diameter of that of the frame portion here. If you put any nicks in it with your Dremel cutting tool, make sure you polish those out and file those out so it's nice and smooth. The new races that you're going to end up putting in, make sure you put the races in the freezer for a small amount of time, because that will cause them to contract or shrink. And then what I would recommend doing is to do my trusty map gas. This is a great tool when you're working on old bikes or trikes or whatever have you. Take that map gas or whatever. Sometimes butane will work, but you need it pretty warm. Map gas burns hotter. You'll heat this, the outside portion of this boss, and that will help expand it a little bit. And then what you'll do is take there's a new a new backer plate you put in first, followed by the race. And then that race you will be able to put in there lightly and then tap in using a 30 millimeter socket. And then you're going to tap all the way until it's backed out against the backer plate that's in there, and then you're good to go. I mean, for the most part, I'm not going to go crazy explaining this. That covers the biggest pains in the butt. But just make sure that whatever you cut or grind or whatever you do, make sure you polish it up and clean it up nice and easy. And when you're in here, when you have all this apart, make sure you clean out this center tube right there that is essentially connects this side of the frame to that side of the frame, because there is a disgusting amount of rust, dirt, and mud and schmutz that builds up in there over 35 years. So while you have it apart, you might as well clean it. After that, I did some brake adjusting, but that pretty much handled that. Make sure you pack the bearings very nicely. There is a specific way to properly pack a taper bearing, so make sure you look into those videos based on that. It's not just dipping it in grease. You actually have to force grease into the, like what I can't really demonstrate it, but you put some grease in the palm of your hand and you just kind of rotate the bearing into the grease, and that kind of packs it in between the rollers and everything. But I'm sure there's videos out there on how to do it properly. Anyway, moving along, now that the swing arm bearings are complete, they're installed, it's beautiful, nice and tight. I moved on. Obviously, you could tell by now I'm missing forks. So what I realized, I guess a couple weeks ago, is that my fork seals were piston fork oil, and they are most likely the originals. So I guess I could cover this whole process. Obviously, your forks extend through your triple trees, through your triple clamps. Prior to removing this wheel, you're gonna have your fork over here. There are 6mm bolts in the bottoms of your fork sliders. You're gonna wanna loosen those when the forks are still on the bike and your front wheels still secured or attached, or the triple clamps are tightened down, because that's going to keep it from. Actually, no, that's not true, because the fork sliders will spin. Make sure your axle, at the very least, is through both of the fork sliders, attaching them, because that'll keep them from rotating. So loosen those 6mm bolts, and then while the fork tube is still in your triples, there is also this top cap, which you're going to want to tighten while that's up there too, because that obviously, this holds it nice and tight. It keeps it from spinning. Once those two things are loosened, you're going to back out your fork tube and slider as one piece assembly. Pull it out. After that's done, you can back these 6mm bolts out. As you can see, there is a copper washer that stayed on that one. Sometimes they come out together. There it is. But that one's stuck in there. I'm not going to mess with it. What I'll do now is, since these are apart already, I'm kind of backtracking. I'm going to set up the camera on a tripod so I can just kind of shoot down in this angle, and I can explain the parts and how they're disassembled and assembled inside these fork tubes and sliders. So I'll be right back. Alrighty, welcome back. So, once you pull out your forks, these will be essentially together. This 6mm bolt that you're going to back out of here and totally pull out, that will allow you to separate these two assemblies, okay? This is going to be probably filled with really nasty fork oil and or water, because once the seals go, the water likes to creep into there and completely dirty it up. So make sure you have a pan or something ready to catch all that disgusting schmutz. Then you will be left with this assembly. Excuse me. As you can tell, this is removable, so you can back this off, and then you are left with the fork tube. So this cap that you loosened up previously, you're going to be able to, now that you've loosened it, and it's not going to be slipping in your hands, you'll be able to back it out totally. There's a little bit of spring pressure in there, so be careful. It won't shoot out, but there is some pressure behind it. Set this aside. There is an O-ring on here. Make sure you inspect that. Make sure it's nice and lubed up, hydrated. What I like to do is put out some rags, so obviously if something falls down, I can see it. But here are the components inside the fork tube in order. First, you'll have this spring, the shorter spring. Then you'll have a washer, which goes between the springs. After that, you'll have the large spring. I'll kind of stagger that here. Make sure oh yeah, you can see everything. After that, you'll have this part, which has this spring on it. Put it just like that. And that is the complete contents and all of the components inside of these fork tubes. So with that apart, make sure what I do is I take brake cleaner. I'll take something on a long aluminum rod so it doesn't scratch up the inside and clean out the inside, because there's going to be years and years and years, essentially decades of dirt and disgusting mud and schmutz in there. So make sure you clean all that up. Once you have that apart, these are your fork sliders. Now, backtracking, moving backwards, you're going to have this cup washer in there. On top of that cup washer, you're going to have your actual oil seal. So we'll lightly put that in there. And on top of this oil seal, you're going to have this circlip. And on top of this circlip, you're going to have your dust seal. Now, make sure you can see. I can come a little closer. This dust seal, you're going to pop off. It's very easy to pop off. Put that aside. This circlip, you're going to take a tool. What I like to use is a scratch awl, but make sure you don't scratch anything inside of here, because all of these interior aluminum surfaces it's pretty crucial that the oil seal seats properly on there, and there aren't any, there's no damage on there or anything. So you'll take this scratch awl or whatever you take, tool you use to kind of pry this circlip out. Obviously you can see there's little, what's this side? There's little bends in here. So what you'll do is you'll put your tool right there and kind of pry up one side, and then it'll come right out. After that, what you can do is you can use a flathead screwdriver, or you can use a seal puller, whatever you have. I use a flathead screwdriver because it works just fine as long as you're careful. You will kind of, I can demonstrate. How about that? You'll put it in here like so, and just very slowly rotate and pry upwards. And eventually that will pop up and your oil seal will come out. Now, set that aside because you're going to use those later. Take this, I forgot what I called it earlier. I don't even know what the proper term for this is, but I'd call it a cupped washer. I think I called it a cupped washer. Take that aside because you're going to need that. So when you have this apart, you're going to be able to look down into these fork sliders. There is going to be a ton of mud down there. Make sure you inspect inside, clean everything, brake cleaner, whatever you want to clean it. What I usually do is I put a little brake cleaner and then a little WD-40 on some emery cloth and really, really polish out these interior diameters. Actually, I can see there's a little bit of damage on the diameter of that. There's a little nick there. I'm going to have to clean that up. Good thing I did this video. Anyway, so once this is all clean, what you're going to do is, in order, cupped washer. You're going to put this fork tube into a vise. Probably I would recommend using some soft jaws so you don't nick up the exterior surfaces of this tube. You'll take your new oil seal. You'll notice that there's a deep groove on one side and a shallow groove on the other. And that shallow groove, you can see there's a obvious little spring there. You're going to put that shallow groove up like so. It's not going to go so easily with a new seal. But then you're going to take your old oil seal, place it on top of your new oil seal, and that will allow you to tap in the new oil seal into place, and then this will slide right out. What you're going to do is tap it in until it's completely bottomed out against that cupped washer. Pull out your old oil seal, and then you'll take your circlip and place it into there and lock it into place. Make sure it's secure. Once that is done, take that out so I don't lose it. This will be essentially finished for now. You'll be able to set this aside. Moving along back to your fork tube. In reverse order. First comes your spring, your smallest spring. Place it on this part here, okay? Now, you're going to place this part with this spring on it into the fork tube. Now, place your fork tube at an upward angle because this spring could slide off and end up at the bottom of the fork tube. You do not want that. You want this staying on this portion. So put that in. Now that my fork tube is at an upper angle, I'll take this little aluminum flat stock that I have, if I could pick it up ever, and slowly slide that up. Now, I'm going to turn this around so you can see. That male portion of that part that you slid in there with the spring is going to have to fit through that hole, and it won't do so easily. You'll have to kind of jiggle it around, and then it finally comes through. And once it's through, grab it, and you have it in place, and that won't slide out anymore. Now, once you've got that side secure in your hand, you could start reassembling all of the rest of your parts, followed by your large spring comes in first. Slide that nice and easy in there. Then comes your washer, which fits between both of these springs. Drop that in there and make sure it is flat against the spring which you just dropped in there. So I will do that now. Just kind of bounce it around. It'll fall right in there. I don't know if you can see that, but you don't really need to. Then put in this last spring on there, and then gravity will be doing its job. You can just kind of let go now. All these interior components, inside components, will be pushing down on those parts, so nothing's going to come out of place. And then you'll take this top cap and very lightly just thread it in there temporarily, just so it catches and there's pressure on all of those interior components and nothing's falling out. Now, obviously, you can turn it upside down, manipulate it, do whatever you have to do. And this is the final piece that goes on there. What you'll do next is, once this is your fork slider is all assembled with your fresh seals and is properly cleaned up, you will take your fork slider, slide your fork tube into your fork slider, place it like so, then line up your bolt. That actually lined up very nicely. Excuse me, thread that in there, send it home, nice and tight. Not too tight, obviously, because you are you don't want to strip any of the threads, but nice and tight. You can even put a little Loctite on there if you want. Make sure that's bottomed out. But for the sake, you know what? Screw it. I'll leave it in there for now. Take your fork tube and your assembly, your entire assembly, put it right side up, and this is when you're going to want to grab it in a vise with some soft jaws. Once this is in your soft jaws, what you're going to do is you're going to have to hold this tube, the actual fork tube, in your hand, okay? You will back out. Prior to doing any of this, by the way, you're going to want to prep your required amount of fork oil, which you're going to pour into this fork tube is going to be. So I believe, I don't remember what it is. I don't want to mislead anyone, but I use 1008 fork oil, whatever the ATC250SX recommended fork oil amount is. Pour that into a measuring cup and set that aside because your hands are going to be tied up. Anyway, I digress. Take your hand, grab this fork tube, and then you're going to take this cap off. If you take this cap off and you're not holding onto this, this fork tube is going to slide right down. I can demonstrate that. There you go. So you're going to take your hand, grip that. It's going to be in your vise now. Your hand is going to be preventing it from sliding down. You will then, I will take this to mimic, your fork oil. Pour it into the top of your fork tube. And once that's in there, it's all nice, and hold it there for a couple of seconds. Let it drain all the way down to the bottom of the assembly. Once that's in there, what you're going to want to do is slowly slide your fork tube down. And then slide it back up very slowly. And what that does is it helps eliminate any air bubbles which may have built up inside of the fork oil, because obviously it's been a little agitated. It's going from a container into the fork tube. So some air bubbles can form around there. So work it up and down a few times. Once you're comfortable with the amount of times that you've worked it, you will take this cap very lightly, Jesus, very lightly seat it, thread it onto your, wow, into your fork tube. Oh my goodness, it'll be obviously in your vise at this point. Seat it into your fork tube, and then that'll be supplying downward pressure and keeping everything vertical and from sliding down. At that point, you can send this home with your hand up until the point that the O-ring gets to the top of the fork tube. That'll probably keep you from going any further. Once this assembly is back in your triple clamps, you can grip it with the bottom one, and then you can tighten this once it's nice and tight in your triple clamps. And once that's in there, that is pretty much the disassembly and the reassembly and rebuilding of your ATC250SX forks. Fairly certain that they're the same from 85 through 87, so you shouldn't have any problems there. This is the first time I've done this rebuild, and there's a few videos online. I pretty much took the best of a few videos with pointers and stuff, so I kind of figured I would take all that information because I didn't see any front to back videos as far as the ATC250SX. So hopefully I'm doing somebody a favor. Hopefully I'm helping someone out. That's why I make these videos, because when I'm stuck at a certain point and I don't know what the hell I'm doing, I hope to God that there's something online that I'll be able to reference. So anyway, I hope this helps you out. I hope everyone's safe, healthy, happy, and I will check back with all of you once all of this is finished. Take care.